Right now, everybody's freaking out about this website, ChatGPT. So in this video, we're going to talk about how to ask ChatGPT how to learn a language and how I can recommend that you use ChatGPT to help you with your language learning and what the limitations are so you don't get caught up doing something that you really shouldn't. Because remember, artificial intelligence is just that, artificial. It might seem like it's great, but there are some major limitations. So if you decide to ask ChatGPT how to learn a language or how to learn a specific language, it's going to keep it pretty general. And that's not ChatGPT's fault. That's a very, very big question. And that question is why I have a job. Interestingly enough, if you ask ChatGPT, generally speaking, how to learn a language, it's going to go through a very similar plan that I go through in the method. It's going to say set goals, gather resources, learn basic pronunciation, greetings, study grammar and vocabulary, practice listening and speaking, read and write, language immersion, set a study routine, track your progress, stay motivated. And this really isn't a whole lot different from the method where it goes mindset, methods, and metrics. It kind of matches up, but at the same time, it's not very specific because it can't really give you specific answers because of the same reason why I don't give people specific answers if you're not my clients. I could tell you to use a language exchange to practice speaking. I could tell you to use certain apps to learn your vocabulary. But the thing is, if I give you specific advice and it's not based on anything like your personality, your interests, your goals, then that's not actually going to help you. It's honestly going to make it worse. So that's the first thing to know about how to ask ChatGPT how to learn a language. Not even a computer, and especially not a computer, can tell you what exactly to do if you don't have some of these things answered for yourself. Now, assuming you do know more precisely what it is that you're looking for in your language learning, there are certain things that you can ask ChatGPT to give you some brainstorming information that you can use to come up with a ChatGPT language study plan. Now, one of the easiest things to do with ChatGPT to learn a language is vocab. Ask it to list all the vocab that you need. This could mean the most commonly used words. For example, let's say you need to learn all the most commonly used words in the language. Not only do you want the words, but you want some sort of context to study with them. It really can be as simple as asking ChatGPT what are the, let's say, 100 or 300 most commonly used words in the language, and then take it a step further and ask ChatGPT to create simple sentences based on that vocabulary. Or let's say if you want to learn words for an upcoming study session, or if you're really interested in a certain hobby and you want to practice your language skills watching like a YouTube video or something, you can totally ask ChatGPT to translate either a collection of words or say what are, 100 words to do with yoga or with architecture or whatever your interest is. Now keep in mind with translations that ChatGPT is not a translator app, so there are much better resources, much more dependable, reliable resources. I would not recommend ChatGPT or any AI system as of now to accurately translate vocabulary words in a foreign language. And it's all about being creative. Once you have the strategies in mind, it can be really, really simple to just ask the artificial intelligence to execute these strategies. Like if you want to use mnemonics to learn new vocabulary words, it's really easy to say, hey, ChatGPT, come up with a mnemonic device for these collections of words. Because if you're not very creative, but in theory that will work for you, it's a really easy shortcut to get the information that you need so that you can use it. Just remember that it's really good for the brainstorming part of learning a language, but it's not an effective resource for the actual practice or execution of that language learning. It's more for a study plan kind of thing. Another thing that ChatGPT can be really good for when it comes to learning languages is grammar. Now keep in mind, ChatGPT and other AI is really good at doing basically busy work. Obviously, it can't teach you how to conjugate words appropriately or create sentences, but it can come up with the sentences and the context that you need to practice. So for example, if you're struggling with a particular grammar concept, you can ask ChatGPT to explain the grammar concept. And even if the answer that ChatGPT gives you isn't really doing it, you can ask it to regenerate the response. And that way you can get 2 to 3 different versions of the same explanations, because sometimes that's all we really need. Sometimes with the more complicated grammar structures, it's really just putting the information into our brains over and over and over again until eventually it accepts it. Now, the more important part of learning grammar is the actual practice of it. You need to practice. You can't just memorize the theory. You have to be able to actually use it, and ChatGPT can help you with this as well. For one, if you have no idea how to practice grammar concepts, you can literally ask ChatGPT. You can ask it to brainstorm a few different ways to practice these grammatical concepts, and then once you come up with a few different ideas and you pick one or two that ChatGPT gives you, you can ask ChatGPT to do it for you. So for example, a strategy that I really like to do in my own language learning is fill in the blanks, where you have a sentence and you're supposed to, conjugate a word or pick the right word that goes in the blank to complete the sentence. You can ask ChatGPT to come up with the sentences for you to pick and choose which word goes into that space. Now, keep in mind, I would not recommend depending on ChatGPT for, exact precise sentences or definitions, translations, correct words, things like that. But when it comes to just a simple pattern and getting used to simple patterns, it can be really helpful. And if it's giving you just a slight leg up in your language learning, there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you're not relying on it for 100% accuracy. I mean, it's ChatGPT, it's not Google Translate, and Google Translate isn't even particularly good. So keep that in mind. My next tip is for those who want to practice their writing in their target language. ChatGPT is honestly excellent for this, because for writing, one of the biggest problems is writer's block, right? You're staring at a blank page, you have no idea what to write, no idea what to think about, no idea what direction to go. Thing is that writer's block is really just kind of not being able to brainstorm ideas really well. Fortunately, ChatGPT is excellent at automatic brainstorming. So for example, if there's a particular tense in the language that you want to practice, and let's say it's a tense that you use in the future tense, and you can ask ChatGPT for writing prompts about the future. You can do, dreams, goals, plans, any sort of thing. Or if you want to do a holiday theme, or you want some themes that you can work with a language tutor on, ChatGPT can be a really excellent way to get those ideas flowing, so you can, skip past the writer's block and the empty page and get right to the actual language learning. You can also do things like personality questions. This is excellent for beginners. If you have started learning a language at the beginner level, you know that it's all going to be about you and about other people, where you live, what you like, what you're wearing, what you look like, that kind of stuff. While thinking of these topics and these themes can be really, really uninteresting, all you have to do is ask ChatGPT to come up with a list of questions about personality traits, or first date questions, or questions to ask to learn about somebody else. Let ChatGPT do the brainstorming so that you can focus on the actual language learning. And the next way that you may want to ask ChatGPT how to learn a language is talking about routines and schedules. Again, this is after you have a really specific idea of what you're looking for in your language learning, what resources you want to use, what you want your progress to look like, all that kind of stuff. These aren't questions that you can ask about general, what is a general language learning strategy, because that's not going to be the most helpful. Once you know things like what your schedule looks like, what resources you want to use, how often you want to study, when you want to study, if your energy level tends to fluctuate during the day or during the week, then it's really easy to plug this information into ChatGPT and have ChatGPT tell you a routine that might work well for you. You can go really, really specific, saying, give me 5 weeks of a study routine based on 1 week is at 100% energy, then 20% energy, whatever it is. It can really help you think outside the box of how to put language learning into your everyday routine, which I'm a huge fan of. But then again, you do have to approach it with a lot of information already in mind. And with that said, I do want to talk about some of the limitations, some of the things that you should not be expecting ChatGPT or any AI to be able to do for your language learning. For one, don't expect artificial intelligence to be more than it's meant to be. People really love to talk about how complex AI is and how it's going to destroy all of our jobs, but you have to realize that artificial intelligence is not people. While it can be a really useful resource, it's not a professional teacher. It's not a human being. At least at this point, there's no way for artificial intelligence to give you feedback on your pronunciation or have a conversation with you. Although to be fair, chatbots are getting a little closer, but they're still not totally there. There is a huge difference between the information that you can input into ChatGPT and what comes out of it, and having a conversation with a human being who personally knows what language learning is like and can personally direct you to the information that you're looking for. And if you'll notice, none of the tips I've mentioned in this video have anything to do with speaking or listening, which is a giant chunk of learning languages. In fact, the vast majority of language learners would prefer to be able to speak and understand than read and write. And because ChatGPT does not work with audio or conversations and it can't understand you, that is a huge limitation to bear in mind. And of course, like I said before in this video, ChatGPT cannot give you any more information than you can give it. There's going to be a huge difference between asking ChatGPT how to learn a language and asking ChatGPT how to learn specific vocabulary in specific ways using specific resources in a specific time frame. The more information, the more details that you learn for yourself, the more that you can use ChatGPT for your advantage when it comes to learning a language. And of course, these are all things that I teach in my 3-part framework, The Method. My clients learn everything that they need to know about how to learn a language for themselves so they can take these details, put it into ChatGPT, and get a little bit more help with brainstorming and opening their mind about what is possible in their language learning. And that is it for this video. If you found it valuable, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified when I post a new video every Wednesday. I'll see you there.